Gran Turismo Sport might not have the physics or the options or the wheel and device support that we come to expect from the top level PC simulators. That being said, it does do a couple of things right and it could teach the PC games a lesson or two. So here we are, without further ado, 5 things that Gran Turismo Sport does better than the holy PC simulators. In the UK, we love traffic cones so much, we take 3 years to repair a 1 mile stretch of road. Item number 1, traffic cones. If you haven't played GT Sport, you might not think traffic cones are very important, but after a few hours of playing GT Sport, you learn that traffic cones are essentially glorious, beautiful orange racetrack lighthouses. Now, the traffic cones, unfortunately, don't stop your car from understeering, especially on off-camber and flat corners. That would be amazing, but they don't do that. But what they do is they tell you where the brake points are and where your car should be on the circuit going into a corner where the apex is. And what's genius about this is that in reality, those of you that live in the UK of course are familiar with this, traffic cones exist. And often they are used on real world racetracks when people are doing track days or track learning and track training. They are used in real life to mark out where your car should be and where brake points are. Now some of you might be thinking, but you can use a racing line in games, and yeah you can, but racing lines should never be used, and I'll tell you why. What happens when you use racing lines is that you end up learning to follow racing lines. It's the game equivalent of following Sweet to Rolf Harris's The Witch's House, where you end up getting stuffed and then roasted alive in a cauldron because you were too busy focused on the sweets to notice that that's a pretty damn creepy building and you should probably stay away from it. I like to call this phenomenon follow the racing line blindness. And the difference between that and traffic cones is the traffic cones are just little markers that guide you gently in the right direction, but force you to really still make out your own absolute brake points and your own actual race lines, and maybe pay attention to where there's trees, bits of Armco marking or road marking that you can use for your actual defined, super tight, super neat, super fast, super tidy race line through corners. What's especially good is that you can have them turned on in races and, you know, it makes people more likely to hit brake points. Of course, you could also just turn them off. They're just added if you put them on as an option. But just so much better than race lines and big, giant corner markers that some developers had an aneurysm and thought was a good idea to do at certain points in history. Of all things in GT Sport that other developers need to copy and just have as an option in game, it's the traffic cones. Put traffic cones in games. Gamer Muscle for traffic cones. Vote Gamer Muscle traffic cones 2018. Thank you. I could drive cars as well as the current government is running the country. Number 2, explaining how cars handle and why. I don't know what happened with modern simulators, but for some reason they all assume that everybody is a born natural, super duper race car driver. Despite many of the modern simulators trying to appeal to a wider market and not just be for pure simulator use. This is why it's rather baffling that they don't really break things down in a very clear way. It's even more baffling when you consider you have games like Richard Burns Rally and other previous driving titles going back in time that actually did explain all this. But out of the modern generation, GT Sport does appear to be one of the best driving games to take the time, break things down into manageable chunks and really fully or reasonably adequately explain what understeer is, what oversteer is, how long it takes to brake, when you should brake, if you should trail brake, and do it in a nice way with a dunce cone of disappointment, a silver diamond of despair, and a glorious golden disco ball of congratulations. Granted, the GT Sport driving school lesson mode isn't the most inspired, it's very much Japanese, it is also very grindy, but it's there, it is there, and I think it does a reasonable job of explaining things. Other developers need to somehow find the time or development budget, or just it needs to be in every single driving game, because, you know, driving simulators are rather intimidating, and if you want to get people to be addicted, ruin their bank accounts and destroy their life by spending too much time in this hobby, you have to ease them into it. That's why street salesmen always give out free samples, because the punter will always come back for more. Ease them into it, get them addicted, Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt, everybody's making more money.
Fast, sharp right. Fast, sharp right. Sharp right. Sharp right. Listen. Sammy, You have to listen to my call, Sammy. Please, I beg you.
Number 3, breaking tracks down to learn them bit by bit. Learning racetracks takes time, can be a bit of a chore, but it especially takes a long time if you always have to drive the whole entire circuit to try that one specific corner or section of corners to completely nail them down. The human brain is very much like a small front door letterbox in that you can fit small bits of post through it quite easily, but if you try and stuff your very fragile Amazon order through it, thank you Royal Mail, it'll end up damaged and what you get through the post likely won't be of very much use to you. As it is in GT Sport with the track learning feature, they break the circuits down into multiple small little components, allowing you to repeatedly try those corners and that section over and over again until you've managed to get an acceptable time or you realise that you should be doing something more productive with your life. The end result, however, is that the letterbox doesn't get jammed, the information stays in the brain, and you have a better time all round. It baffles my mind that we don't tend to have even a basic version of this in driving simulators, where it just plonks you on a track before a corner or instantly respawns you at a reasonable speed for the section that you're about to take. So you can just try it over and over again. We don't even need the golden disco balls because sim races are miserable, so that won't help them. Just need the ability to be able to do it and practice it. Even once you know a circuit, it would be fantastic to be able to just instantly respawn and keep trying corners. Come on developers, this is something you need to do. Learn from GT Sport, get on it. Playing tennis against toddlers isn't fun. Cashier number 4 please, matchmaking. Now I've talked about this before in quite a few videos, so we're not going to go too into depth, but you know, matchmaking, competitive games, esports, you have to have matchmaking, you have to have ranking. Why is it so rare in driving simulators? Oh dear, I don't know. It really does have to be there if you want to have good racing experience. Now we do have iRacing, ACC looks like it's going to have it, and it's kind of in sim racing system, but that's a mod by a crazy guy. And of course it's not just having the ranking and the matchmaking, it's how it's done, and I have to say, how GT Sport does it is actually pretty damn good. The main thing is that they funnel people into specific events. There's not too many events, but those events happen very regularly, but can be scaled such that you always end up with a race that's got a good split of users and that there's all users going into a very small selection of content, meaning that you're more likely to be ranked with people that are close to you and a similar skill level, making it more likely you're going to be racing against people that are going to be at the same pace as you, which is pretty fundamental to online racing. But they also have a really good ghosting system dependent on your ranking skill level. So if you're particularly unsafe and you've yet to learn what the middle brake pedal does, especially on T1, you will be of a low rank and you'll find that there's more ghosting, which means that if you're a person that does try to drive safe and actually stays out of the way of things, you won't have your race completely and utterly destroyed over and over again in general, and you'll be able to move out of that and gravitate towards the higher safety ratings and rankings to a point where they actually turn off the ghosting once you're at the super duper license rank. All in all, what's happened is GT Sport have thought, online racing, especially on consoles, is generally pretty terrible. If you've tried to do Forza online, you're better off getting a drill and putting it through both ear holes. It's going to be more enjoyable. But GT Sport have, for the most part, fixed that. It's not perfect, but it's as pretty good as it's going to get. I also have to say the general penalty system for when you cut tracks and it doles out time isn't really that bad and is a lot better than what's typically found in Assetto Corsa with King John whiting and Project Cars 2 with Hitler whiting. The key thing in GT Sport is that it tells you this is the penalty you've got, this is what you need to do to get rid of it, gives you time to do it, you can choose. It's all very clear, it's very obvious, and the detection for the most part isn't too bad. The online ranking, structure and general nature of it just is conducive to pushing people forward, getting people to drive better, and given how bad console racing is online, and given how good GT Sport is, especially once you start getting your ranking up, it's pretty amazing. And for that reason, other PC simulators, the hardcore simulators, really need to look at it and should really be inspired by it. Number 5, Golden. Balls, disco balls. I've got golden disco balls, shiny balls, dancing balls, rotating balls, flowing balls. My balls hang, Jackie Chan, gonna hit them with a twang. Check out all my balls, I got all the balls. bigger, even bigger balls, tiny, 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 dangly tiny balls. On the subject of balls, men around the world, remember to check your testicles regularly, and if you find a lump, make an appointment with your doctor. It's not bad, and it's better to find out than to die of cancer. Subscribe, for I have saved all mankind. Like, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Goodbye.